Sergeant Marcus Thompson adjusted his ceremonial uniform one last time before stepping out of the guardhouse. The morning sun cast long shadows across the palace courtyard, and the familiar weight of his rifle felt reassuring on his shoulder. 23 years of service to the crown had taught him to notice everything, trust nothing, and always stay alert. The palace grounds were bustling with their usual morning activity. Tourists gathered behind the iron gates, cameras ready to capture the changing of the guard. Staff members hurried between buildings with clipboards and urgent expressions. Marcus had seen this same scene thousands of times, but today, something felt different. As he walked his assigned patrol route along the outer perimeter, Marcus caught sight of a small figure pressed against the fence. A little girl, no more than 7 years old, stood perfectly still among the crowd of excited visitors. While everyone else chattered and pointed, she remained silent, her dark eyes fixed on something beyond the palace walls. Marcus followed her gaze across the street to a plain white van parked in the visitor parking area. There was nothing, obviously, unusual about the vehicle. It looked like any other delivery van that might belong to a catering company or maintenance service. But the child's intense focus on it made Marcus pause. The girl had shoulder-length brown hair and wore a simple blue dress with white shoes. She clutched a small stuffed rabbit against her chest, but her attention never wavered from the van. Marcus noticed her lips moving slightly, as if she were counting or whispering something to herself. "Excuse me, miss," Marcus called gently, approaching the fence where she stood. "Are you here with your parents?" The girl turned to look at him, and Marcus was struck by the unusual maturity in her young eyes. She seemed older than her years, carrying a weight that no child should bear. "My mummy is buying postcards," she said in a soft voice, pointing toward the gift shop near the main entrance. "She told me to wait here and watch the pretty soldiers." Marcus smiled despite his growing unease. "Well, I'm one of those soldiers. Is there something interesting you're looking at over there?" He nodded toward the van. The girl's expression grew serious. She glanced around nervously, then stepped closer to the fence. "The men in the van have been watching the palace all morning," she whispered. "They have big cameras, but they're not taking pictures of the building." Marcus felt a chill run down his spine. His training kicked in immediately. Children often noticed things adults missed because they weren't yet conditioned to ignore their instincts. "What kind of cameras?" he asked, keeping his voice calm and friendly. "Long ones," the girl replied, making a gesture with her hands to indicate length. "Like the ones I saw in the spy movie my daddy watches. They point them at the soldiers and the gates, writing things down in books." Marcus's pulse quickened. Professional surveillance equipment would be a serious security concern. He needed to investigate this immediately, but he also couldn't leave the child feeling frightened or ignored. "You're very observant," he told her. "What's your name?" "Emma," she replied. "Emma Patterson. My mummy says I notice too much sometimes." "There's no such thing as noticing too much, Emma. You might be helping keep everyone safe today." Marcus reached for his radio, then hesitated. He needed to verify the girl's claims before raising an alarm. "Emma, I want you to do something very important for me. Can you go find your mummy now and stay close to her? Don't look at the van anymore and don't point at it. Can you do that?" Emma nodded solemnly. "Are the men bad people?" Marcus chose his words carefully. "I don't know yet, but you've helped me notice something that might be important. You're a very brave and smart girl." As Emma walked away toward the gift shop, Marcus casually repositioned himself to get a better view of the white van. At first glance, it appeared empty, but as he watched more carefully, he could make out the subtle movement of someone inside. The van was parked at an angle that gave its occupants a clear view of the main palace entrance, the guard posts, and the patrol routes. If someone wanted to study the security procedures, it would be an ideal position. Marcus began walking his normal patrol route, but now he paid special attention to the van. During his next pass, he noticed that it hadn't moved in over an hour, despite being parked in a spot that typically had high turnover. Through the tinted windows, he could occasionally see the glint of metal that could indeed be professional camera equipment. The girl had been right. Someone was conducting surveillance on the palace, and they had been doing it long enough to establish patterns and gather detailed information. The implications were serious. In his years of service, Marcus had dealt with protesters, overeager tourists, and the occasional security threat. But organized surveillance suggested something more significant might be planned. As he completed his patrol loop, Marcus saw Emma emerge from the gift shop with a woman who was obviously her mother. The resemblance was clear, and the woman carried herself with the same quiet observation skills that Emma had displayed. Emma caught sight of Marcus and gave him a small wave, careful not to look in the direction of the van. Her discretion impressed him further. This child had better operational security instincts than some trained professionals he'd worked with. Marcus made his decision. Whether the surveillance was from journalists, security researchers, or something more sinister, it needed to be investigated immediately. The palace security protocols existed for good reason, and any unauthorized intelligence gathering had to be taken seriously. He reached for his radio, moving to a position where he couldn't be easily observed from the van. But before he could make the call, something else caught his attention. A second van, nearly identical to the first, had appeared at the opposite end of the street. The coordination was too perfect to be coincidental. Marcus realized that Emma had helped him discover something much larger than simple curiosity, or even amateur surveillance. This was professional, organized, and potentially dangerous. The morning sun climbed higher, casting shorter shadows across the courtyard. What had started as a routine patrol was rapidly becoming something much more serious. Marcus knew that the next few hours would test everything his years of training had taught him. The little girl's innocent observation had potentially uncovered a serious threat to one of the most secure locations in the country. Now it was up to Marcus to figure out exactly what that threat was and how to stop it. Marcus keyed his radio with practiced calm, though his heart rate had increased significantly. "Control, this is Perimeter 7. I need to report possible surveillance activity on the north side." The voice that crackled back was immediately alert. "Perimeter 7, specify nature of surveillance." 2 white vans positioned for optimal visual coverage of main entrance and patrol routes. Civilian-spotted occupants with professional camera equipment. Duration unknown, but estimated over 1 hour static positioning. Copy that, Perimeter 7. Maintain visual contact. Do not approach. Backup units en route. Marcus acknowledged, and continued his patrol, though every instinct told him to investigate immediately. Years of military discipline held him in check. Protocol existed for situations exactly like this, and breaking procedure could compromise whatever response was being organized. As he walked, Marcus observed more details about the surveillance operation. The vans were positioned perfectly to cover different angles of the palace security perimeter. Their occupants had clearly done advanced scouting to select these locations. This wasn't amateur hour. A movement in his peripheral vision caught his attention. Emma and her mother were walking toward the palace gates, apparently planning to leave. But Emma kept glancing back at him with an expression of concern that seemed far too mature for a 7-year-old. The girl suddenly tugged on her mother's sleeve and pointed in Marcus's direction. After a brief conversation, both mother and daughter approached the fence where Marcus was standing. "Officer," Emma's mother called out, "my daughter says she spoke with you about something she noticed. She's quite insistent that she needs to tell you something else." Marcus approached them, maintaining his professional demeanor while keeping the vans in his peripheral vision. "Yes, ma'am. Your daughter is very observant." Emma stepped forward, still clutching her stuffed rabbit. "Mr. Soldier, there's something else." The man in the first van talked on his phone twice, and both times the second van came after. Marcus felt ice water in his veins. Coordinated communication between surveillance units suggested a level of organization that moved this well beyond casual intelligence gathering. "When did you see the second van arrive, Emma?" "Right after the man talked on his phone the second time." "And there's something else?" Emma glanced around nervously, then motioned for Marcus to lean closer to the fence. He knelt down so he could hear her whisper. "The man in the van wrote down numbers when the soldiers changed positions. He has a big book, and every time a soldier moves, he writes something down." Marcus's blood ran cold. If someone was documenting guard rotation schedules and patrol timing, they weren't gathering information for academic purposes. This was operational intelligence gathering of the type used to plan serious security breaches. "Emma, you've been incredibly helpful," Marcus said quietly. "I want you and your mummy to move away from this area now, okay? Go visit the gardens, on the south side of the palace. They're much prettier and you'll be safer there." Emma's mother, who had been listening with growing concern, immediately understood the implication. "Is there danger?" "Possibly, ma'am. Please follow my suggestion and move to the south gardens immediately." As the mother and daughter hurried away, Marcus radioed again. "Control, additional intelligence. Surveillance targets are documenting guard rotations and patrol schedules. This is operational reconnaissance, not casual observation." "Understood, Perimeter 7. Special response team is 2 minutes out. Continue observation but maintain safe distance." Marcus continued his patrol, but now he was studying the vans with professional interest rather than casual concern. The positioning was too perfect, the timing too coordinated, and the equipment too sophisticated for this to be anything innocent. Through the tinted windows of the first van, he could occasionally see movement that suggested at least 2 occupants. The second van appeared similarly occupied. That meant a minimum of 4 people conducting coordinated surveillance on one of the most secure locations in the country. A black sedan pulled up near the palace security office, and Marcus recognized the occupants as members of the Special Protection Unit. These were serious professionals who dealt with the highest level security threats. Their presence confirmed that his report had been taken very seriously. As the special agents deployed, Marcus noticed something that made his stomach clench with anxiety. A third van, identical to the other 2, had appeared on a side street that provided visual access to the security office entrance. The surveillance team had been watching the palace response procedures as well. They knew exactly how security would react to a potential threat, and they had positioned themselves to observe the response in real time. Marcus radioed immediately. "Control, we have a third vehicle in surveillance network. They're watching our response procedures." The reply came back sharp and urgent. "All units, we have a coordinated intelligence gathering operation in progress. This is now classified as a potential security threat. Implement Level 2 protocols immediately." Around the palace, Marcus could see the subtle but immediate changes that indicated heightened security status. Additional guards appeared at key positions, patrol routes were altered, and civilian access areas were quietly restricted. But the surveillance team was prepared for this too. As soon as the security changes began, Marcus observed increased activity in all 3 vans. They were documenting the enhanced security procedures as well. A horrible realization struck him. This wasn't just surveillance for a future operation. The surveillance itself might be a probing action designed to force the palace security to reveal their enhanced protocols and emergency procedures. Whatever was being planned, it was sophisticated enough to account for multiple levels of security. Response. Marcus had stumbled onto something far more serious than simple reconnaissance. The special agents were now in position around the perimeter, but they faced a dilemma. Approaching the vans would confirm that the surveillance had been detected, potentially causing the operation to be aborted and moved elsewhere, but allowing it to continue meant permitting further intelligence gathering on sensitive security procedures. Marcus watched as plainclothes officers took positions in the tourist areas, trying to blend in while maintaining visual contact with all 3 vehicles. The coordination required was impressive, but Marcus wondered if it would be enough. Through his earpiece, he heard tactical communications between the special agents. They were identifying additional spotters and possible support vehicles throughout the area. What had started as a simple observation by a curious child was revealing a sophisticated intelligence operation targeting the heart of the monarchy. Emma's innocent comment about men watching the palace had uncovered something that could potentially threaten the safety of everyone inside those walls. Marcus realized that the little girl's sharp eyes and willingness to speak up might have prevented something terrible from happening. But as he watched the tactical situation develop around him, Marcus understood that this was far from over. The Surveillance team's level of preparation suggested they had contingency plans for being discovered. The question was whether palace security could stay ahead of whatever those plans might be. The tactical radio chatter in Marcus's earpiece intensified as more intelligence flowed in from the coordinated observation effort. What the special agents were discovering painted an increasingly alarming picture. Control, we have confirmed. Visual on professional photography equipment including telephoto lenses and digital recording devices, came one report. Secondary team reports possible communications equipment consistent with real-time data transmission, added another voice. Marcus felt the weight of the situation settling heavily on his shoulders. Real-time transmission meant that whatever intelligence was being gathered was being sent somewhere else immediately. This wasn't just reconnaissance for a future operation. It was active intelligence feeding into something that could be happening right now. As he continued his modified patrol route, Marcus spotted Emma and her mother in the distance, safely positioned in the south gardens as he had suggested. But even from far away, he could see that Emma was still watching the activity around the palace with those remarkably perceptive eyes. The child had started something that was rapidly expanding beyond anything Marcus had experienced in his 23 years of service. Palace security dealt with threats regularly, but this level of sophisticated surveillance suggested resources and planning capability that went well beyond typical security concerns. Through his peripheral vision, Marcus noticed movement in the first van. Someone was speaking on a phone again, just as Emma had observed earlier. Within seconds, he saw coordinated activity in the other two vehicles as well. Control, surveillance subjects are communicating. Possible coordination for next phase of operation, Marcus reported. The response came back immediately. All units prepare for possible subject movement. Do not permit vehicles to leave surveillance areas without full tactical escort. Marcus understood the implications. If the surveillance team tried to leave, they would be stopped and questioned. But if they were allowed to continue, they might gather enough intelligence to threaten the security of everyone in the palace. The decision was made for them when the first van's engine started. Subjects in Vehicle 1 are preparing to move, reported one of the plainclothes agents. Vehicle 2 is also starting engines, came another report seconds later. Marcus watched as the tactical situation escalated rapidly. Police vehicles that had been positioned discreetly throughout the area suddenly became visible as they moved to intercept the surveillance vans. But the coordination of the surveillance team became immediately apparent. As soon as the police response began, the third van moved to block the street access route that the officers were using. It wasn't trying to escape. It was buying time for the other two vehicles. "We have deliberate interference with tactical response," came the urgent radio call. "This is organized resistance to law enforcement activity." Marcus realized that they weren't dealing with passive surveillance anymore. This was an active operation with multiple phases and contingency planning. The level of sophistication suggested professional training and significant resources. The first van accelerated suddenly, not toward an escape route, but directly toward the palace gates. Marcus's training kicked in immediately as he realized what was happening. "Control. Vehicle 1 is moving toward main entrance at high speed. This is not an escape attempt. Repeat, this is not an escape attempt." Marcus ran toward the main gate area, knowing that whatever was about to happen, he needed to be in position to respond. Behind him, he could hear the sharp commands being issued to tourists and staff to move to safe areas immediately. The van screeched to a halt just outside the main gate, and Marcus could see figures moving inside. But instead of emerging, they appeared to be activating equipment of some kind. "Electronic equipment is being activated in Vehicle 1, reported an agent with visual contact. "Unknown purpose but consistent with communications or recording devices." Marcus suddenly understood what was happening, and the realization made his blood run even colder than Emma's initial warning had. This wasn't an attack on the palace. It was a test of the palace's security response procedures. Someone was forcing the security system to reveal its capabilities, response times, and tactical procedures under high-stress conditions. Every move being made by palace security was being recorded and analyzed in real time. The surveillance wasn't preparation for an attack. It was an attack on the security system itself, designed to map and understand every aspect of how the palace defenses worked. Control. I believe this is a security system penetration test, Marcus radioed urgently. They're forcing us to reveal our procedures and capabilities. The tactical coordinator's voice came back immediately. Explain your assessment. Perimeter. 7. They positioned themselves to observe normal operations, then forced us to implement enhanced security, then forced us to implement tactical response. Every phase has revealed more of our capabilities. They're building a complete intelligence picture of our security system. There was a moment of silence before the response came back. Assessment confirmed. This is a penetration testing operation. All units assume that all current tactical procedures are being compromised. Marcus watched as the situation around him shifted again. The special agents were no longer just trying to apprehend suspects. They were now operating under the assumption that their every move was being studied and recorded for future exploitation. The second van had moved to a position where it could observe the modified patrol routes that had been implemented during the enhanced security phase. The third van was recording the response times and positioning of the special tactical units. In a matter of hours, someone had gathered enough intelligence about palace security procedures to potentially compromise every aspect of the defensive system. Marcus thought about Emma's innocent observation about the men with cameras. The little girl had spotted the beginning of one of the most sophisticated intelligence-gathering operations he had ever encountered. But now that the operation had been detected and was being countered, Marcus realized that they might be moving into an even more dangerous phase. If this was a test of security procedures, then the real operation, whatever it was intended to accomplish, was still somewhere in the future. The van engines were still running, and Marcus could see continued activity inside all three vehicles. Whatever phase came next in this operation, it was apparently about to begin. Through his earpiece, Marcus heard the tactical coordinator issuing new orders. All units, we are shifting to containment protocol. These subjects cannot be permitted to leave the area with the intelligence they have gathered. Marcus understood that the situation was now beyond anything in normal security protocols. They were dealing with a systematic attack on the security infrastructure of one of the most protected locations in the country. And it had all started with a 7-year-old girl who noticed that something didn't look quite right about a van parked across the street from the palace. The containment protocol Marcus heard through his earpiece represented the highest level of security response short of an actual attack on the palace. As he positioned himself according to the new tactical assignments, Marcus could see the operation expanding to involve resources he hadn't even known were available. Unmarked vehicles appeared from multiple directions, carrying additional special agents and tactical equipment. Aircraft that had been invisible suddenly became audible overhead. The response was massive, coordinated, and clearly planned for exactly this type of sophisticated intelligence-gathering operation. But the surveillance team was ready for this. Escalation 2. As soon as the enhanced containment procedures became visible, all three vans began moving in a coordinated pattern that suggested they had rehearsed this exact scenario. They weren't trying to escape the containment. They were maneuvering to observe and record the containment procedures themselves. Marcus realized with growing horror that even the highest level security responses were being turned into intelligence, gathering opportunities. Someone had anticipated every level of palace security response and had prepared to exploit each escalation for additional information. Control. Subjects are actively maneuvering to observe containment procedures. Marcus reported. They're treating our tactical response as additional reconnaissance opportunities. The tactical coordinator's response was sharp with frustration. Confirmed. We are dealing with a systematic intelligence harvesting operation. Every defensive measure we implement provides them with additional data. Marcus watched as the tactical teams faced an impossible dilemma. They couldn't allow the surveillance to continue, but every action they took to stop it was providing the surveillance team with exactly the information they seemed to be seeking. In the distance, Marcus could see Emma and her mother being escorted toward the secure evacuation area that had been established for civilians. Even from far away, He could see that Emma was still watching everything with those sharp, observant eyes that had started this entire sequence of events. The first van suddenly accelerated toward the main gate again, but this time it didn't stop outside the perimeter. It approached close enough to trigger the automatic security barriers, then retreated just as the barriers activated. Marcus understood immediately what was happening. "Control, they're testing our automated defense systems. They're mapping the trigger distances and response times for the physical security barriers." The response came back grimly. "Perimeter 7. Assume that all automated systems are being systematically probed and mapped." The second and third vans began similar probing maneuvers at different locations around the perimeter. Each approach triggered different defensive responses, and each response was being carefully observed and recorded. Marcus had never encountered anything like this level of systematic intelligence gathering. It was as if someone had developed a comprehensive plan to map every aspect of palace security by forcing each system to reveal itself under controlled conditions. Through his earpiece, Marcus heard coordination between the tactical commander and higher authority levels. The conversation he could overhear suggested that this type of systematic security probing had been anticipated at the highest levels of government security planning. "We have confirmation that this is a known operational pattern," came the update, through tactical channels. Similar systematic security probing has been detected at other high-security facilities across the region. Marcus felt a chill that had nothing to do with the morning air. If this was part of a pattern targeting multiple secure facilities, then it represented something far more serious than an isolated security threat. The surveillance vans continued, their coordinated probing of different security systems, each maneuver designed to force a defensive response that could be observed and analyzed. But Marcus noticed that they were being very careful not to actually breach any security perimeters or commit any actions that would justify immediate tactical intervention. They were staying just inside the boundaries of legal behavior while conducting systematic intelligence gathering on security procedures. It was sophisticated, calculated, and deeply troubling in its implications. Marcus's radio crackled with an update that confirmed his worst fears. "All units, we have intelligence, indicating that similar systematic probing operations are currently active at multiple high-security facilities, simultaneously. The coordination required for simultaneous operations at multiple locations suggested resources and planning capability that went far beyond anything Marcus had encountered in his military career. This was systematic, professional, and organized, at a level that implied significant backing and support. But even as Marcus grappled with the larger implications, he remained focused on his immediate responsibilities. Whatever was being planned for the future, his job was to protect the palace and everyone in it right now. The tactical teams were adapting their procedures in real time, trying to counter the intelligence gathering without providing additional information to the surveillance teams. But it was an almost impossible balance to maintain. Marcus watched as the special agents implemented what appeared to be deception procedures, creating false response patterns designed to mislead the surveillance rather than reveal actual capabilities. It was sophisticated counterintelligence work happening in real time under pressure. The first van made another approach to the gate area, but this time the security response was different. Instead of activating the automatic barriers, the guards implemented what appeared to be a manual response procedure that the surveillance team hadn't seen before. Marcus realized that the tactical teams were now actively running counterintelligence operations, feeding false information to the surveillance teams while concealing the actual security capabilities. But the surveillance team adapted immediately to this new development. Instead of continuing the systematic probing, they shifted to what appeared to be passive observation mode, letting the security forces reveal their deception procedures as well. Marcus understood that he was witnessing a high-level chess game, being played between professional intelligence operatives and professional counterintelligence specialists. Every move and countermove revealed additional information to both sides. Through his earpiece, Marcus heard the tactical coordinator coordinating with headquarters. "We need to shift to termination protocol. This intelligence gathering operation cannot be permitted to continue." Marcus knew that termination protocol meant that the situation was about to escalate to active intervention rather than containment and observation. The gloves were about to come off. But as he prepared for whatever was about to happen next, Marcus caught sight of movement in his peripheral vision that made his blood run cold all over again. A fourth van, identical to the other three, had appeared, in a location that provided perfect observation of the tactical coordination center that had been established to manage the containment operation. The appearance of the fourth van sent shockwaves through the tactical communications network. Marcus could hear the sharp intake of breath from the tactical coordinator as the full scope of the operation became clear. All units. We now have 4 confirmed surveillance vehicles in coordinated positions. This operation is significantly larger than initially assessed, came the urgent update. Marcus positioned himself to observe the new vehicle while maintaining his assigned sector coverage. The fourth van was positioned perfectly to observe the command and control procedures being used to coordinate the response to the first 3 vehicles. The level of advanced planning this represented was staggering. Through his earpiece, Marcus heard fragments of conversations between the tactical commander and what sounded like national security officials. The phrases he could make out suggested that this was no longer being treated as a local security incident. Pattern matches intelligence regarding systematic security infrastructure mapping operations, was one phrase Marcus caught. Recommend immediate escalation to national security threat level, was another. Marcus realized that Emma's simple observation about men with cameras had uncovered something that was now being treated as a potential national security issue. The little girl's sharp eyes had spotted the beginning of an operation that apparently threatened much more than just the palace. The coordinated movement of all 4 vans began again, but now their pattern was different. Instead of probing individual security systems, they appeared to be testing the coordination and communication between different defensive elements. One van would approach a security checkpoint, while another simultaneously triggered a different defensive system. The timing was precise enough to force the security teams to coordinate their responses, revealing the communication procedures and command structures being used. Marcus watched as the tactical teams struggled to respond to multiple simultaneous probes of different security systems. Each response required coordination between different units, and that coordination was being carefully observed and recorded by the surveillance teams. They're mapping our command and control structure, Marcus reported. Each coordinated probe forces us to reveal how our different defensive systems communicate with each other. The tactical coordinator's response was grim. Confirmed. We are dealing with systematic infrastructure mapping at the command level. This is a comprehensive intelligence operation targeting our entire security architecture. Marcus could see the tactical teams implementing what appeared to be communications deception procedures using false radio chatter and dummy coordination, signals to mislead the surveillance teams about actual command structures. But the surveillance operation adapted to this countermeasure as well. The vans shifted their positions to observe the physical movement and positioning of personnel, rather than relying on electronic intelligence gathering. Marcus realized that whoever was running this operation had anticipated every level of defensive, response, and counterintelligence measure that might be implemented. The level of preparation was beyond anything he had encountered in his military experience. Through his earpiece, Marcus heard updates indicating that similar systematic probing operations at other facilities had suddenly intensified at the same time as the escalation at the palace. The coordination across multiple locations confirmed that this was a large-scale, professionally organized intelligence operation. The tactical commander's voice came through with new urgency. All units, we have authorization for active interdiction. Termination protocol is now active. Marcus knew that active interdiction meant that the surveillance teams would be actively approached and confronted rather than simply observed and contained. The situation was escalating to direct confrontation. But as the tactical teams began moving to intercept the surveillance vehicles, Marcus observed something that made him realize the operation was entering yet another phase. All 4 vans began moving in a coordinated withdrawal pattern, but they weren't trying to escape the area. Instead, they were repositioning to observe the active interdiction procedures being implemented by the tactical teams. Even the termination protocol was being turned into an intelligence gathering opportunity. Marcus watched as special agents approached the first van, following procedures designed for high-risk interdiction of potentially dangerous suspects. Every aspect of their approach, positioning, communication, timing, and tactical procedures, was being recorded by cameras in the other 3 vans. The occupants of the first van offered no resistance to the interdiction. They emerged from the vehicle with their hands visible, following instructions precisely and cooperating fully with the tactical team. But Marcus realized that their cooperation was part of the intelligence operation too. By complying fully with the interdiction procedures, they were forcing the tactical teams to demonstrate their detention and processing protocols under operational conditions. Through his earpiece, Marcus heard the tactical coordinator coordinating with higher authorities. Subjects in Vehicle 1 are cooperating fully with interdiction procedures. No resistance encountered. But the voice that responded carried a tone of deep concern. Be advised that full cooperation may be part of operational methodology. Assume all interdiction procedures are being observed and recorded for intelligence purposes. Marcus watched as the special agents processed the occupants of the first van, while the other 3 vehicles maintained their observation positions. Every detail of the detention procedures was being systematically recorded. The equipment found in the first van confirmed Marcus's worst fears. Professional surveillance cameras, recording equipment, communications gear, and detailed written logs of security procedures and timing. But more disturbing were the documents that suggested this was just one component of a much larger operation involving multiple locations and extended time periods. Marcus heard fragments of the tactical coordinator's report to headquarters. Professional intelligence gathering equipment confirmed. Written documentation suggests extended systematic study of security infrastructure. Multiple facility coordination confirmed. This appears to be a comprehensive security infrastructure mapping operation. The interdiction of the second van proceeded similarly, with the occupants offering full cooperation, while the remaining vehicles recorded every aspect of the tactical response. Marcus began to understand the full scope of what Emma had helped him discover. This wasn't just intelligence gathering about the palace. It was systematic mapping of security response capabilities that could be used to compromise multiple high-security facilities. As the tactical teams prepared to interdict the third van, Marcus received an urgent communication through his earpiece. Perimeter 7. Intelligence analysis indicates that systematic security probing operations are concluding simultaneously at all affected facilities. Pattern suggests coordinated termination of intelligence gathering phase. Marcus felt a chill as he realized what this meant. If the intelligence gathering phase was concluding, then whatever these operations were preparing for was about to move into its next phase. The fourth van began moving toward an exit route, apparently attempting to leave the area before it could be interdicted. But Marcus could see that even its withdrawal was being conducted in a manner designed to provoke and observe one final security response. Everything that had started with a little girl's innocent observation about suspicious men with cameras was revealing itself to be part of something much larger and more dangerous than anyone had initially realized. The interdiction of the fourth van became a high-speed pursuit through the streets surrounding the palace as the tactical teams attempted to prevent the escape of what had clearly become the most crucial intelligence asset of the entire operation. Marcus remained at his post, maintaining perimeter security while monitoring the tactical communications describing the pursuit. The fragments he could hear painted a picture of a chase involving multiple agencies and sophisticated evasion techniques. Suspect. Vehicle demonstrating professional evasion capabilities, came one report. Multiple pre-planned escape routes being utilized, came another. As the immediate crisis moved beyond the palace grounds, Marcus found himself reflecting on the extraordinary sequence of events that had unfolded since his morning patrol began. In Sakhtsatir, the secure area where civilians had been evacuated, Marcus could see Emma sitting with her mother, still clutching her stuffed rabbit. Even from a distance he could see that she was asking questions and listening intently to the explanations her mother was providing. The tactical coordinator's voice came through his earpiece with a final update on the immediate situation. 3. Vehicles successfully interdicted. Occupants in custody. Equipment secured for analysis. Fourth vehicle escaped but is being pursued by multi-agency task force. Marcus understood that the immediate crisis at the palace was over, but the larger implications of what had been discovered were just beginning to be understood. Over the following hours, as the enhanced security protocols were gradually reduced and normal operations resumed, Marcus learned more about what the intelligence analysis was revealing. The equipment found in the 3 captured vans contained detailed documentation of security procedures at multiple high-profile facilities across the region. The operation had been far more comprehensive than even the tactical coordinators had initially realized. Written logs showed months of planning and preparation, with systematic study of security responses under different threat conditions. The level of detail was sufficient to allow someone to predict and counter security responses at facilities they had never even visited. But perhaps most disturbing was the discovery that the systematic intelligence gathering had been designed to map security vulnerabilities that could be exploited simultaneously across multiple facilities. The documents found in the vans contained detailed timing analyses showing how security resources could be overwhelmed by coordinated incidents at different locations. Someone had been planning operations that would stretch security capabilities beyond their ability to respond effectively. As the day progressed, Marcus received updates through official channels about the broader scope of what had been uncovered. Similar surveillance operations had been detected and interdicted at government facilities, military installations, and critical infrastructure locations across several countries. The coordination required for such an extensive operation suggested state-level resources and planning capabilities. Emma's innocent observation had helped uncover what appeared to be a systematic intelligence-gathering effort by a foreign intelligence service. By late afternoon, as Marcus prepared to complete his extended shift, he was approached by a senior officer he didn't recognize. The man wore civilian clothes but carried himself with the unmistakable bearing of high-level military or intelligence authority. "Sergeant Thompson," the man said, "I understand you were the first to recognize the significance of the surveillance operation this morning." Marcus nodded. "Yes, sir, though the credit belongs to a civilian child who noticed the unusual behavior and brought it to my attention. We'd like to speak with that child and her family if possible. Her observations may have prevented something far more serious than a simple intelligence-gathering operation." Marcus looked across to where Emma and her mother were completing their witness statements with investigators. "The little girl is Emma Patterson. She's 7 years old, but she has remarkably good observation skills." The senior officer followed Marcus's gaze. "According to the preliminary analysis, the intelligence gathered today was sufficient to plan coordinated attacks on multiple high-security facilities. Your quick recognition of the threat and proper reporting procedures may have prevented a significant national security incident." As the investigation continued over the following days, Marcus learned the full scope of what Emma's sharp eyes had helped prevent. The systematic intelligence-gathering operation had been the final preparation phase for coordinated attacks planned to occur simultaneously across multiple countries. The level of planning and coordination suggested that preventing the completion of the intelligence-gathering phase had disrupted operations that had been years in development. Multiple international intelligence services were now working together to investigate the full scope of the threat network. Emma and her family were eventually recognized officially for their contribution to preventing what could have been a catastrophic security incident. The little girl who had simply noticed that something didn't look right about a van parked across from the palace had helped uncover and prevent an international security threat. Marcus remained on duty at the palace, but his experience that day had changed his perspective on the importance of seemingly small observations and the value of listening to anyone who noticed something unusual, regardless of their age or background. The enhanced security procedures that had been implemented during the crisis became permanent improvements to the palace security infrastructure. The systematic probing by the surveillance teams had actually helped security officials identify weaknesses in their own procedures that needed to be addressed. In a strange way, the intelligence operation that had been designed to map security vulnerabilities had ended up strengthening the very systems it had been intended to compromise. Several months later, Marcus received word that the international investigation had led to the identification and disruption of a sophisticated network of intelligence operatives working to map security systems at critical facilities worldwide. The operation that had begun with systematic surveillance of the palace, had been part of a much larger effort to gather intelligence for coordinated attacks that could have caused significant casualties and disrupted critical infrastructure across multiple countries. Emma's simple observation about men with cameras and Marcus's willingness to take a child's concerns seriously had started a chain of events that ultimately prevented what could have been one of the most serious international security incidents in recent history. As Marcus continued his daily patrols around the palace grounds, he often thought about the morning when a 7-year-old girl had noticed something that seemed unusual and had the courage to speak up about it. The lesson he carried with him was that security threats could come from any direction and in any form, but they could also be prevented by ordinary people who paid attention to their surroundings and were willing to report things that didn't seem quite right. Emma Patterson had proven that sometimes the most important security asset was simply a pair of sharp eyes and the willingness to trust your instincts when something seemed wrong. Her innocent observation had quite literally helped save lives and prevent an international crisis, and it had all started with a little girl who noticed that the men in the van had been watching the palace a little too carefully for a little too long.